A cautious and uneasy quiet has descended upon the Middle East. After 12 days of unprecedented and direct military conflict, a ceasefire between Israel and Iran is now in effect, bringing a temporary halt to the fighting. Brokered by Qatari mediators, the truce began on Tuesday, June 24, 2025, and as of today, it continues to hold. Both nations have publicly stated their commitment to respecting the agreement, provided the other side does the same. This pause in hostilities has allowed for a semblance of normal life to resume in the affected regions. In Israel, schools and offices are once again opening their doors, while citizens in Tehran are slowly returning to their daily routines. The international community has reacted with a mixture of relief and apprehension. French President Emmanuel Macron described the ceasefire as both volatile and fragile, a sentiment that captures the precarious nature of this newfound peace. He strongly urged a swift return to diplomatic negotiations, emphasizing that a lasting solution cannot be achieved through military means alone. Across the globe, leaders are watching the situation closely, understanding that any violation could instantly reignite the conflict. The restoration of internet services in Iran and the reopening of its eastern airspace are positive signs, but they do little to mask the deep-seated tensions that led to the violence in the first place. This is not a resolution. It is merely a pause. This period of direct confrontation marks a dangerous new chapter in the long-running shadow war between the two regional powers. For years, their animosity played out through proxies and covert operations, but the recent escalation saw direct missile strikes and aerial combat. The ceasefire, therefore, is not just a break from fighting, but a step back from a potential full-scale regional war that could have had devastating global consequences. The relief felt by citizens on both sides is palpable, yet it is tempered by the knowledge that the core issues driving the conflict remain entirely unresolved and could easily flare up again without warning. The world now waits to see if this fragile calm can be transformed into something more substantial and enduring. The head of the International Atomic Energy Agency, Rafael Grossi, has called for immediate diplomacy and dialogue, stressing the critical need for his inspectors to regain access to Iran's nuclear facilities. The pause in fighting provides a crucial, if narrow, window of opportunity for international mediators to de-escalate the situation and steer both nations away from the brink. The hope is that this ceasefire can serve as a foundation for renewed talks, but the path forward is fraught with obstacles and immense distrust. The 12 days of fighting have left a devastating human toll on both sides of the conflict, a grim reminder of the real-world consequences of geopolitical strife. In Iran, the health ministry has reported a staggering number of casualties, with 627 people killed and nearly 4,900 injured, primarily in attacks on major cities like Tehran and Kermanshah. The dead include not only civilians, but also high-ranking military figures, such as Major General Ali Shadmani of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, signaling a significant blow to Iran's military leadership. These losses have sent shockwaves through the nation, leaving communities to grieve and rebuild in the wake of the destruction. Israel too has suffered significant losses from Iran's retaliatory strikes. At least 28 people were killed, and over 1,000 others were injured in cities like Tel Aviv, which faced barrages of missiles and drones. The attacks caused widespread damage to infrastructure, forcing the evacuation of approximately 15,000 Israeli citizens from their homes. The psychological impact on the population is immense, as the conflict brought the reality of war directly to their doorsteps. The scale of the violence has shattered any sense of security, revealing the vulnerabilities of even the most advanced defense systems when faced with a determined adversary. Militarily, Israel claims to have achieved several key objectives during the conflict. The Chief of Staff of the Israel Defense Forces, Eyal Zamir, declared that Israel had successfully established air dominance over Iran and conducted deep commando operations within its territory. He asserted that these actions had systemically degraded Iran's nuclear program, thereby removing what he described as an immediate existential threat to his country. These claims are intended to project an image of strength and strategic victory, reassuring the Israeli public and sending a clear message of deterrence to its regional adversaries. However, these gains came at a high price in terms of both human life and regional stability. While the active fighting may have stopped, the broader regional conflicts continue to simmer, threatening to undermine the delicate ceasefire. In Gaza, the war persists, with Israeli forces continuing their operations and facing resistance. On the same day the ceasefire with Iran was announced, 7 Israeli soldiers were killed in Gaza, and dozens of Palestinians lost their lives in both Gaza and the West Bank. Furthermore, Houthi rebels in Yemen have continued their drone attacks targeting Israel, demonstrating that the network of regional proxies remains active. These ongoing hostilities create a volatile environment where a single miscalculation could easily draw Israel and Iran back into direct confrontation. At the heart of the recent conflict lies the contentious issue of Iran's nuclear program, and the extent of the damage it sustained remains a subject of intense debate and conflicting reports. Officials in the United States and Israel have projected an image of decisive success. President Trump, along with senior intelligence figures, has claimed that the Israeli strikes resulted in the total obliteration of key facilities, setting back Iran's nuclear ambitions by years. They specifically pointed to the destruction of the Fordow enrichment facility, which they described as inoperable, and a critical uranium conversion plant in Isfahan. These statements paint a picture of a program left in ruins. However, a more nuanced and less definitive picture is emerging from other intelligence sources. A preliminary report from the United States Defense Intelligence Agency, which was leaked to the media, suggests a more modest setback of only months, not years. This assessment indicates that while the entrances to the underground Fordow facility were sealed by the attacks, the subterranean chambers themselves did not collapse. This crucial detail implies that the core infrastructure, including sensitive equipment and materials, may still be intact and potentially recoverable. This discrepancy highlights the difficulty of accurately assessing damage to heavily fortified and secretive locations from afar. Further complicating the picture is the fact that Iran appears to have retained significant and crucial components of its nuclear program. According to experts and the Defense Intelligence Agency report, Iran still possesses media group, Iranian scientists in lab, nuclear equipment in storage, centrifuge components in warehouse at stock at distribute_equally, its stockpile of near-bomb-grade uranium, a large number of uninstalled advanced centrifuges, and potentially other undisclosed or secret facilities that were not targeted. Perhaps most alarmingly, reports suggest that Iran successfully moved approximately 400 kilograms of highly enriched uranium to an unknown location just before the hostilities began. The International Atomic Energy Agency has confirmed it lost surveillance and visibility of this material, creating a dangerous gap in international oversight. The International Atomic Energy Agency has confirmed that it observed severe damage at several of Iran's declared nuclear sites, but its ability to provide a comprehensive assessment is severely hampered. The agency's inspectors have had no access to any of the facilities since June 13, 2025, leaving the world in the dark about the true status of the program. Iran's parliament has since voted to suspend all cooperation with the International Atomic Energy Agency, a move widely seen as a tactic to gain leverage in future negotiations. This lack of transparency creates profound uncertainty and fuels fears that, despite the recent attacks, Iran may still possess the key ingredients for a nuclear weapon. With the guns now silent, the focus has shifted to the diplomatic arena, but the path forward is clouded by deep-seated mistrust and conflicting agendas. The United States has announced that direct talks with Iran are scheduled to begin as soon as next week. However, President Trump has simultaneously downplayed the need for a new comprehensive nuclear deal, expressing confidence that Iran's program is already obliterated. This stance could complicate negotiations, as it appears to dismiss Iran's primary motivation for returning to the table: sanctions relief and the preservation of what remains of its nuclear infrastructure. The success of these talks will depend on whether both sides can find common ground amid their maximalist public positions. The risk of renewed conflict looms large over any diplomatic effort. Some security experts warn that the Israeli attacks, far from ending Iran's nuclear ambitions, may have the opposite effect. The strikes could reinforce the belief within the Iranian leadership that only the acquisition of a nuclear weapon can provide the ultimate deterrent against foreign intervention. This logic could push Tehran to accelerate its program in secret, making the region even more dangerous. Meanwhile, the Iranian regime has intensified its internal crackdown, arresting hundreds of citizens accused of being Israeli spies, which could further isolate the country and empower hardliners who oppose any compromise with the West. The international community is racing against a ticking clock. European powers are particularly anxious to broker a diplomatic solution before key United Nations sanctions, which were part of the original 2015 nuclear accord, are set to expire in October 2025. The expiration of these sanctions without a new agreement in place could remove critical leverage over Iran and potentially allow it to legally acquire advanced military technologies. This deadline adds a sense of urgency to the upcoming talks, pressuring all parties to engage constructively before the diplomatic window closes and the momentum for peace is lost. Ultimately, the future remains profoundly uncertain. The ceasefire has brought a welcome respite from violence, and people across the region are cautiously hoping that this fragile peace will last. However, the fundamental problems that ignited this crisis persist. The deep animosity between Israel and Iran, the unresolved status of Iran's nuclear program, and the ongoing regional proxy wars all continue to simmer just beneath the surface. While diplomacy offers a glimmer of hope, the tensions remain dangerously high. The world watches, holding its breath, hoping that dialogue will prevail over the ever-present threat of another even more devastating war.